Have you heard of the wind phone? My friend reminded me of this invention as we were talking about getting ready for the holy days. This phone booth attached to nothing but the wind, located in a remote spot in Japan, was set up for mourners whose family and friends were tragically killed after the earthquake and tsunami there in 2011. The mourning and grief was overwhelming, as over 20,000 people were killed and thousands were missing, gone forever. And people had no normative way of mourning. The wind phone was one person's response. He needed to talk to someone, and for that someone to be no one at the same time. To reach his loved ones and speak to them directly. My friend, Rabbi George Gittleman asks, when we listen to Kol Nidre or sing Avinu Malkeinu, are we not in dialogue with people and places long gone to us in a physical sense? We are all needing to cry out into that wind phone at this moment, each time we come to Yizkor, every year. But this year is harder because we are in denial. We feel anger. We are bargaining. We are depressed. And we are learning to accept. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was a Swiss-American psychiatrist who worked with terminally ill patients, and she is best remembered for developing what has come to be known as the Kubler-Ross model of grief. Her work identified 5 major stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. She identified these stages as the major functions of the mourning process, and while not everyone who grieves experiences each of these stages, and they don't necessarily follow any order, these stages are probably familiar to any one of us who has experienced loss. At this very moment in time, we are all experiencing loss and grief in new ways that deprive us of our normal ways of coping. Funerals, unveiling ceremonies, and Shiva Minyanim are usually times where we gather in community, give hugs, and show support for one another. Those of you who experienced the death of a loved one during this period have had to adapt. You have experienced funeral homes requiring you to choose just 10 people who could be present for the burial of your loved one. You've been told you cannot gather inside. Your clergy has told you that you must stay masked at all times while your heart is in turmoil and you want to see the faces of your dear ones. You are gathering in Shiva Minyanim on Zoom. This has been so hard for all of you. It's been hard for all of us. During our High Holy Days, it's time to take stock. Whether it is your recent loss of a loved one or the grief and loss that we feel in some form due to the way the virus has changed our lives, where are you now when it comes to loss and grief? Are you avoiding things, finding yourself confused or in shock? Are you afraid? Denial. Are you frustrated by things that you normally would let slide? Do you find that you are irritated or anxious more than you might usually be? Anger. Are you struggling to find meaning? Do you find yourself reaching out to others and wanting to tell your story? bargaining? Do you feel overwhelmed and helpless, like you just want to run away or give up? Or are you hostile to the world at large? Depression. Do you have moments of putting new plans in place? Are you using the word pivot more often? Acceptance. I think that if we are honest with ourselves, we will find that we have all been experiencing many, if not all, of these stages of grief multiple times a day. If we were to treat each individual we interact with as if they were wearing a mourner's ribbon, a kriya ribbon, if we walked through each day knowing that each person we encounter is suffering deep loss, would that change the way we spoke to them? We are all walking the path of grief at this moment. We call to God. We use the words of the prayers that our ancestors left to us, crying together into the wind.